I'm Megan Thompson, a financial analyst at Blackwood & Company, one of the country's most prestigious investment firms. I've been working here for 5 years and, over that time, I've developed a real passion for what I do. The routine is challenging, but it is exactly this adrenaline that keeps me motivated. Every day, I feel like I'm contributing to something bigger and helping our clients achieve their financial goals. Recently, something unusual happened. I was reviewing some financial documents, a routine task for me. However, on that particular afternoon, I noticed something strange. There were discrepancies in the numbers, something that didn't make sense. Initially, I thought it might be a typo or a misunderstanding. However, as I looked deeper, I realized that it was not a simple mistake. It was something much more serious. That can't be true, I muttered to myself as I flipped through the reports. Those numbers, they just don't add up. For a few moments, I was in shock. My mind was working a mile a minute, trying to understand what those numbers meant. If my calculations were correct, there was a significant embezzlement of funds going on within the company. This could be a disaster, not only for Blackwood & Company's reputation, but also for all the employees and customers who trusted us. I need to look into this further, I decided, still in disbelief. But for now, I can't share this with anyone. The repercussions could be devastating. So, I started diving deeper and deeper into the documents, reviewing transactions, checking and cross-referencing information. With each new discovery, concern increased. I didn't know who was behind this scheme, but I was determined to find out. My mind couldn't rest until I had all the answers. I spent sleepless nights, analyzing every detail, every suspicious financial movement. Most of the employees had already left when I was still in the office, alone, with a cup of coffee by my side, trying to make sense of it all. At one of these moments, my mentor and friend, Tom, walked into my office. "Megan, are you still here?" "It's almost 10 at night," he said with a worried expression. "Yes, Tom. I'm just finishing up some analysis," I replied, trying to hide my anxiety. "Are you okay? You seem worried." "I'm fine, just a little tired," I lied. I didn't want to involve Tom in this until I was sure what was going on. Tom looked at me for a moment, as if trying to read my thoughts, but decided not to press further. "It's okay. Just don't overwork yourself, okay? Leave it, Tom. Thanks for your concern." As the days went by, I started to notice a pattern in suspicious transactions. They all seemed to be linked to a single name, Richard Harris, my boss. The discovery left me devastated. Richard has always been a respected authority figure within the company, someone I thought had integrity and trustworthiness. How could he be involved in something so dirty? "I can't believe he would do that," I whispered to myself, feeling a mixture of anger and disappointment. But the evidence was clear. Richard was embezzling money from the company. I knew I needed to take action, but I also knew I couldn't do it alone. I needed concrete evidence before taking the matter to the authorities. I decided I would continue investigating, collecting evidence, and documenting each discovery. I couldn't let Richard destroy the company and hurt so many people. My nights continued to be sleepless, but my determination only grew. She was willing to face any obstacle to protect the integrity of Blackwood & Company and ensure justice was served. I knew the path would be arduous and dangerous, but I couldn't turn back. And so, my journey to unmask Richard Harris began, with each step taking me deeper into a world of conspiracies and betrayals I could never have imagined. As I deepened my investigation, I realized that the person responsible for the embezzlement was none other than Richard Harris, my own boss. The feeling of disappointment was overwhelming. Richard always presented himself as a principled and inspiring leader, someone I admired. But now, it all seemed like a facade. I felt angry and betrayed, but I knew I needed to remain calm and proceed with caution. I had to gather concrete evidence before reporting him to the authorities. I decided I needed to start working secretly. My first step was to thoroughly review all the financial documents that had passed through my hands over the last few months. I couldn't leave any traces of my investigation, so I did it after hours, hiding my progress on an encrypted hard drive I kept at home. Each night felt like a game of cat and mouse, with the tension that someone could discover what I was doing at any moment. One day, while reviewing some old emails in my cubicle, Tom, my mentor and friend, stopped next to me. "Megan, are you okay? Do you look tired?" he asked me with a worried expression. "I'm fine, Tom. Just a little overwhelmed with some analysis," I replied, trying to sound convincing. Tom frowned, but didn't press the issue further. I knew he cared about me, but I couldn't involve him in this dangerous situation, at least not yet. Things started to heat up when I found a series of suspicious bank transfers linked to offshore accounts. The documentation was well hidden, but I was able to track the money, which always seemed to go back to shell companies linked to Richard. I knew I was on the right path. During one of these nights of investigation, my phone rang. It was an anonymous call. I answered with hesitation. "Megan Thompson?" A male voice said on the other end of the line. "Who is talking?" I asked, my heart racing. "Does not matter. Stop what you are doing, or there will be consequences." The call ended before I could respond. I felt a chill go up my spine. Someone knew. Someone was watching me. The next day, I found a manila envelope on my desk. Inside was a photo of me entering my apartment the night before. Next to the photo, a handwritten note, "We're watching you." From that moment on, I knew I needed to be even more careful. I started taking different routes to work, constantly looking over my shoulder. Each movement needed to be calculated so as not to arouse suspicion. I decided it was time to share my findings with someone I could trust. I thought about Tom, but I knew that involving him could put him in danger. Then I remembered Lisa, a skilled hacker in the IT department. If there was anyone who could help gather evidence without being detected, it was her. I waited until the office was almost empty and went to Lisa's office. "Lisa, I need to talk to you." "It's urgent," I said, trying to hide the nervousness in my voice. She looked at me, surprised. "Of course, Megan. What is happening?" I closed the door behind me and sat in the chair next to her, explaining everything I had discovered about Richard. I knew he was a mouse, but this is much bigger than I imagined, Lisa said, shaking her head. "I will help you. But we need to be extremely careful." With Lisa's help, I began hacking the company's systems to collect more evidence. She taught me how to create digital disguises and cover our tracks. Every day we became more skilled and confident, but also more aware of the risks. Each new file we found confirmed the extent of Richard's scheme, but also revealed a much larger network of corruption. We knew we were stirring a hornet's nest, but we couldn't stop. Tom, my mentor, was in danger, and the integrity of the company depended on our actions. The journey was just beginning, and I knew I would need all the courage and intelligence to face the challenges that lay ahead. At the same time, I began to realize that Richard had powerful allies within the company. It didn't take long for the anonymous threats to start arriving. First, there were simple but disturbing messages: "Watch your step and you don't know who you're dealing with." Then I noticed I was being followed. A black car always seemed to be within walking distance of me, whether I was going to work or coming home. One night, as I was leaving the company, I saw the car again. My heart raced, but I tried to stay calm. I picked up my pace and quickly got into my car. As I drove, my thoughts were racing a mile a minute. Do they know what I'm doing? How did they find out? Suddenly, my phone rang. It was an unknown call. I answered with hesitation. "Hello?" I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're getting into things where you shouldn't be, Megan," said a male voice, cold and calculating. "Stop now, or the consequences will be serious." I hung up immediately, feeling a chill run down my spine. I needed to be more careful. Not just for me, but for Tom. It was then that I discovered something that alarmed me even more. Richard was manipulating documents to incriminate Tom, my mentor and friend. He was being unfairly accused of financial mistakes. The next morning, I went to Tom's office. He was sitting at the table, with a look of concern on his face that I had never seen before. "Tom, I need to talk to you," I began, closing the door behind me. "Megan, I'm in trouble," he replied, sighing deeply. "They're saying I committed fraud, but you know I would never do that." "I know, Tom. And I'm sure Richard is behind this. I've been investigating for weeks and found out he's been embezzling money. He's trying to frame you to divert attention from himself." Tom looked at me, surprised and relieved at the same time. "So you believe me?" "Of course I do. And I will prove your innocence. But I need you to trust me, and for now, don't tell anyone about this." He nodded, visibly moved. "I trust you, Megan. Do whatever it takes." With Tom's support, my determination only grew. But I knew I would need help. It was then that I decided to approach Lisa, a skilled hacker in the IT department. I knew Lisa had her own secrets and reasons to hate Richard, but I didn't know if she would be willing to take the risk. On a seemingly ordinary day, I went to Lisa's office and knocked on the door. "Hi, Lisa. Can I talk to you for a minute?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Of course, Megan. Come in," she replied, without looking up from the computer. I closed the door and sat down in front of it. "Lisa, I need your help. I'm serious." She finally looked up, curious. "What is happening?" "I discovered that Richard is embezzling money and trying to frame Tom. I need hard evidence to turn him in, but I can't do it alone. And honestly, I don't know who else I can trust." Lisa looked at me for a moment, assessing the situation. "This is dangerous, Megan. You know that, right?" "I know. But I can't stand by while an innocent man is destroyed and the company is corrupted." She sighed, seeming to decide something internally. "Okay. I'll help you. But we need to be extremely careful. If Richard finds out, we'll be in serious trouble." From that moment on, Lisa and I started working together. She used her skills to hack the company's systems and collect additional evidence while I continued my field investigation. Our collaboration was risky, but we knew it was our only chance to expose Richard and save Tom. Every day, the pressure increased. The threats continued, and the black car was still nearby. But I was determined. With Lisa by my side and Tom's trust, I knew we could win this battle, even when facing such powerful enemies. Desperate to save Tom, I knew I needed help, but it was hard to know who to trust. The atmosphere at Blackwood & Company was charged with tension, and any misstep could be disastrous. I felt like a fragile piece in a game of chess, where Richard and his allies moved the pieces with skill and cruelty. Then I remembered Lisa, a skilled hacker in the IT department. Lisa was known for being a loner, not very sociable, but extremely competent at what she did. I saw her as my last hope. I decided to approach her, despite concerns that she might be involved with Richard, like many others in the company. One afternoon, after an exhausting day of work, I met her in the building's cafeteria. She was alone, typing frantically on her laptop. I took a deep breath and approached. "Lisa, can I talk to you for a moment?" I asked, trying to sound as calm and confident as possible. She looked up, suspicious. "Of course, Megan. What do you want?" He replied, his voice cold and distant. "We need to talk in a more private place. It is serious." She hesitated for a second, but then closed her laptop and followed me into an empty conference room. I closed the door behind us and turned to her, my heart pounding. "Lisa, I discovered something terrible about Richard. He is embezzling money from the company and trying to frame Tom. I need your help to gather evidence and expose him." Lisa's eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms. "And why should I believe you?" she asked, skeptical. "I know it's hard to trust anyone here, but I swear I'm telling the truth. I have some proof, but I need your skills to get more information and make sure everything is safe." She looked at me for a long moment, as if sizing me up. Finally, she sighed. "Okay, Megan. I'm going to help you. But know that if you're lying, I'll find out. I understand. And I thank you for trusting me, I replied, relieved. From that moment on, Lisa and I started working together. We spent hours analyzing documents, hacking systems, and collecting as much evidence as possible. She was incredible. She could access areas of the system that I didn't even know existed. Little by little, I gained her trust, and she began to open up more. You know, Megan, I also have my reasons to hate Richard, Lisa confessed one night, while we were at my house, working in silence. Which are they? I asked, curious. He ruined the life of someone I loved. My sister worked here and found out something about him. She was unfairly fired and never got a job in the field again. Since then, I have been waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. I'm sorry, Lisa. We will get justice, I promise. Over time, our partnership grew stronger. Lisa found compromising emails, suspicious financial transactions, and even recordings of conversations between Richard and his accomplices. Each new discovery increased our determination. One evening, after a long day of work, Lisa leaned back in her chair and looked at me with a tired smile. I think we have enough to take down Richard, Megan. But we need to be careful. He has eyes and ears everywhere. I know. We will plan each step precisely. We cannot fail. From that moment on, our mission became even more urgent. Tom's life was at stake, and we knew that any mistake could be fatal. But I was determined to fight until the end, and with Lisa by my side, I felt like we had a real chance of winning. When Lisa and I decided to work together to hack Blackwood and Company's systems, we knew we were entering dangerous territory. I, Megan, was determined to expose Richard Harris and save Tom, but I couldn't do it alone. Lisa, with her exceptional hacking skills, was the perfect ally. Our first secret meeting was in a discreet cafe, away from prying eyes. I was nervous, but Lisa seemed calm and confident. Megan, we need to be careful. Richard has eyes and ears everywhere, she said, as she fiddled with her laptop. First, let's create a digital disguise for you. We can't leave any traces that can be traced back to us. I nodded, absorbing every word. What about access to company systems? Can you get in without being detected? Lisa smiled, a gleam of confidence in her eyes. I'm already in. I created a backdoor months ago when I became suspicious of Richard's actions. I just needed a reason to use it. This revelation was a relief. At least we had a head start. We spent the next few weeks working tirelessly, often late into the night. Each new discovery increased our determination and, at the same time, our fear. One night, while we were analyzing suspicious transactions, Lisa made an alarming discovery. Megan, look at this, she said, pointing at the screen. These transfers are linked to the bankruptcy of the competing company, Sterling Investments. I widened my eyes. Are you saying Richard had something to do with Sterling's bankruptcy? Lisa nodded. Yes. And not only that. It appears that he embezzled funds to manipulate the market and cause the ruin of Sterling. This is a much bigger conspiracy than we imagined. We feel a chill down our spine. If Richard was involved in something this grand, he certainly wasn't acting alone. We needed more evidence and, above all, more caution. We need to be very careful, Lisa. This is too big. If we get it wrong, we could end up like Tom, I said, my voice shaking. Lisa agreed. We'll keep digging, but more carefully. I'll encrypt our data and create multiple backups. If something goes wrong, at least we'll have a way to protect ourselves. Our investigations led us to uncover a network of corruption that extended beyond Blackwood and Company. There were politicians, business people, and even members of other companies involved. Each new discovery made us more tense, but also more determined. One morning, while we were reviewing documents, Lisa suddenly stopped. Megan, I think we found the key connection, she said, showing an encrypted email. This email links Richard to an influential politician. If we can decrypt it, we will have the proof we need. I looked at the screen, feeling a mix of hope and fear. Let's do this. We spent hours deciphering the email. When we finally got it, the content was devastating. Richard was in cahoots with a corrupt politician to embezzle funds and manipulate the market. That's huge, I said, barely able to believe it. Yes, it is. And we need to get the authorities involved now. That's beyond us, Lisa replied, her tone serious. We decided it was time to act. Lisa used her skills to ensure our evidence was secure, while I contacted my lawyer friend, Jake. We needed to ensure everything was done correctly to avoid any retaliation. One rainy night, we met up with Jake in a safe location. This is serious, Megan. You are dealing with powerful people. We need to be extremely careful, he said, examining the documents. We know that, Jake. But we can't stop now. Tom is being wrongly accused, and these people need to be exposed, I replied, determined. Jake agreed. I'll help put together a detailed dossier. But you need to protect yourselves. We can't underestimate what these people are capable of doing. From that moment on, we knew there was no going back. We were dealing with a web of corruption that could destroy us, but we also knew that if we could expose everything, we could bring justice not only to Tom, but to many other people who were harmed. The fight was just beginning, and we were ready to face whatever came our way. With the help of my best friend and lawyer, Jake, I began to put together a detailed dossier against Richard and his accomplices. Jake was one of the few people I could trust completely. He was my friend since college and knew my integrity and determination. When I told him about my discoveries and the dangers involved, he didn't hesitate to offer his help. You know you're getting yourself into a hornet's nest, right, Megan? Jake said, as we reviewed the evidence in my small apartment. Yes, I know, I replied, trying not to show the fear I felt. But I can't let Richard and his cronies ruin the lives of more innocent people. Tom is already paying the price for something he didn't do. Jake nodded, his face serious. Let's do this the right way. First, we need to make sure all the evidence is well documented and secure. Then we'll think about how to protect you and the evidence. We spend countless nights analyzing documents, recordings, and emails. Jake guided me on how to organize everything so it would be clear to the authorities. He also taught me how to protect digital files by using encryption and storing copies in secure locations. With each new step, the pressure increased. Tom had been suspended and was facing possible dismissal and criminal prosecution. I felt the weight of responsibility on my shoulders and knew I needed to act quickly. One night while we were working, Jake raised an important question. Megan, have you thought about what you're going to do when Richard finds out you're behind all this? He's not going to sit idly by. I sighed, tired. I know he's going to try to get to me in some way. But I'm willing to take that risk. Tom doesn't deserve to be sacrificed for something he didn't do. Furthermore, we have to think about all the other people who could be affected by this network of corruption. Jake looked me in the eye, his expression full of concern and wonder. You're amazing, you know that? Not many people would have the courage to do what you're doing. Thanks, Jake, I replied, trying to smile. But I couldn't do it without your help. And I also have Lisa by my side. She's brilliant and as determined as I am to unmask Richard. That same night, as Lisa and I worked on our plan to hack the company's systems and collect more evidence, she took me aside. Megan, are you sure we can trust Jake? Lisa asked, with a serious expression. Don't get me wrong, but we're dealing with something very big here. I trust him with my eyes closed, Lisa, I replied without hesitation. Jake is my best friend and advocate. He's risking a lot too to help us. And so far, he's been instrumental in making sure everything is done right. Lisa nodded, but I could see she was still worried. It's okay. I just want to make sure we're not exposing ourselves any more than necessary. With Jake on our side, we felt we had a real chance of defeating Richard and his accomplices. He helped us identify weaknesses in Richard's scheme and strengthen our own security. In a moment of frustration, when things didn't seem to move forward, Jake reminded me of the importance of remaining calm and clear of thought. "Megan, remember they are trying to destabilize us," he said, his voice firm and comforting. "We need to keep our heads on straight and stick to the plan. We're on the right track." I took a deep breath and forced myself to focus. Jake was right. We couldn't afford to make mistakes now. Every detail mattered, and every step needed to be carefully calculated. The pressure was enormous, but I knew I wasn't alone. With Jake and Lisa by my side, I felt like we could face anything. Meanwhile, time was running out for Tom. With each passing day, his situation became more precarious. I knew I needed to act quickly, but I also needed to make sure our evidence was irrefutable. The integrity of everything we had gathered was crucial to exposing Richard and saving Tom. Finally, after weeks of hard work and sleepless nights, our dossier was ready. Jake and I went over every detail one last time. I felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. I knew that from that moment on, things could change drastically. "Megan, we're ready," Jake said, closing the last file. "Now it's time to take this to the authorities and ensure Richard and his accomplices pay for their crimes." I nodded, feeling my heart beat faster. "Let's do this, Jake. For Tom, for the company, and for all the people who were harmed by this corruption." With our dossier in hand and the determination to see justice done, we knew we were entering into an uphill battle, but we were prepared to face any challenge that lay ahead. Tension was in the air, and I felt the weight of each passing second. Richard was aware that someone was investigating his fraudulent activities, and this left me in a constant state of alert. The anonymous threats I had been receiving intensified, and I knew I needed to be even more cautious. Lisa, my ally in the IT department, and I were moving into dangerous territory. "We need to be more careful, Lisa. Richard is stepping up the threats. He's hired a private investigator to find out who's behind the investigation," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear I felt. Lisa, with her usual coolness, replied, "I expected that. We need to create more robust digital disguises. He can't find out it's us. We spend hours devising strategies to hide our digital identities." Lisa was a brilliant hacker, and I completely trusted her skills. However, we knew we were dealing with a cunning and ruthless adversary. Richard had virtually unlimited resources at his disposal, and he would not hesitate to use them to destroy us. "Let's start by creating new encrypted email accounts for all our communications. And we also need to use virtual private networks to mask our tracks," Lisa suggested, as she typed furiously on the keyboard. I nodded, feeling a rush of gratitude for having Lisa by my side. "Let's do this. And we need to be quick. We don't have much time." As we worked, I couldn't help but think about Tom. He was being wrongly blamed for mistakes he didn't make, and with each passing day, his situation got worse. Richard was determined to frame him to divert attention from his own illicit activities. I knew I needed to act quickly to save Tom and expose Richard. One night, as we were reviewing the documents and evidence we had collected, I received an anonymous text message, "You don't know who you're messing with. Stop now, or there will be consequences." I showed the message to Lisa, who just raised an eyebrow. "They're getting desperate. That's a good sign. It means we're close to something big." I wanted to believe that, but the fear that something might happen to me or Tom was constant. However, there was no turning back. We were already deeply involved, and the only way out was to move on. We need to outsmart them. We'll keep gathering evidence, but we also need to protect ourselves, I said, determined. Lisa agreed. "I'll reinforce our security measures. And, Megan, don't worry. We'll expose Richard and save Tom. I promise." The days turned into weeks, and the pressure increased. Richard was becoming increasingly paranoid. We knew he was getting closer to discovering our identities, and our every move needed to be carefully calculated. One afternoon while we were at the office, Lisa pulled me into an empty conference room. "Megan, I discovered something important." Richard is planning a large transfer of funds to an offshore account. This could be the definitive proof we need. My heart accelerated. We have to act quickly. We need to intercept this transfer and make sure it is documented. Lisa nodded. I'm already working on it. I'll need a few hours to hack the system and get all the information. While Lisa worked, I prepared myself for what was to come. I knew that discovering this transfer could be the key to taking Richard down, but I also knew that it put us in even greater danger. Hours later, Lisa called me. I did it. We have all the evidence we need. Now we just need to make sure it gets to the authorities without Richard finding out. I looked at her, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. Let's do this. Let's put an end to Richard once and for all. With the evidence in hand, we knew we were closer than ever to exposing the truth. But we also knew that the path would be dangerous and full of challenges. However, we were determined to move forward no matter what. The integrity of Blackwood and Company, Tom's innocence, and our own safety were at stake. And we weren't going to give up. When I discovered the document linking Richard to a powerful, corrupt politician, I felt a chill run down my spine. The magnitude of the situation was immense, much greater than I had initially imagined. I was sitting in my office, staring at the computer screen, when Lisa entered the room, her expression always serious and determined. "Megan, are you okay?" she asked, noticing my pale face. "I guess so. But look at this," I replied, turning the screen so she could see the document. Lisa came closer and her eyes widened as she read. "This is a lot bigger than we thought. Richard is involved with Senator Whitmore." "That explains a lot," she said, her voice shaking a little. "We need to involve the federal authorities," I declared, already beginning to feel the weight of the decision that was coming. "But, Lisa, this could put our lives at risk." She nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I agree. We need to be extremely careful. Let's talk to Jake and see how we can proceed." Jake arrived at my apartment that night. We sat in the small living room, the atmosphere tense and filled with anxiety. He looked at me and Lisa, and then at the document I had printed. "That's a bomb," he said, running a hand through his hair. "But it's also our best chance. We need to make sure this evidence is secure first and foremost. What do you suggest?" I asked, seeking guidance. "First, we will create digital and physical copies of the evidence. We need multiple backups in secure locations. Then, we will contact a trusted agent at the FBI. Someone who is not compromised." We spent hours that night, scanning documents, making copies, and discussing the best strategy. We knew that any false step could be fatal. Jake made several calls, and finally got through to an agent he knew and trusted. He agreed to meet with us tomorrow night, Jake informed. "Let's take the evidence to him and explain the whole situation." "Perfect," said Lisa. "But we need to make sure no one follows us there." "What are you thinking?" I asked, trying to follow his train of thought. "We can use digital disguise. I'll create a false trail, making it look like we're in a completely different place. That should throw off anyone trying to follow us." The next day, we followed the plan to the letter. Lisa designed a set of digital costumes while Jake and I prepared for the date. The tension was palpable, but we knew we couldn't fail. When we finally found the FBI agent, we handed over all the evidence and explained the situation. He listened carefully, aware of the risk we were taking. "This is very serious," he said, analyzing the documents. "I will launch an investigation immediately, but you need to protect yourselves. This corruption network is immense and they will not hesitate to eliminate any threat." We thanked the agent and headed home, knowing we had done everything we could to ensure the evidence was safe. However, a sense of imminent danger hung over us. We were dealing with powerful and unscrupulous people, and any mistake could be the end of us. "Megan, we did the right thing," Jake said, trying to reassure me. "I know," I replied, trying to believe my own words. "But I also know we need to be prepared for whatever comes next." The days that followed were pure tension. Every movement seemed to be monitored, every step calculated. We knew that Richard and his accomplices were aware that something was happening, but they didn't know exactly what. Our hope was that the FBI would act quickly enough to dismantle the corruption network before they could retaliate. And so, with our hearts in our hands and our minds focused, we continued our fight for justice, knowing we were facing a powerful enemy, but determined not to give up. The tension in the air was palpable as Lisa and I prepared to hand over the evidence to the FBI. We knew that every false step could mean the end of everything we had fought for. The evidence was meticulously organized, but the danger was imminent. Richard, astute as ever, somehow discovered that I was responsible for the investigation. One afternoon, as I was working in my office, Richard appeared, a calculated smile on his face. "Megan, can we talk for a minute?" he asked, in a voice that seemed mellifluous but carried a threatening tone. "Of course, Richard," I replied, trying to stay calm as my mind worked a mile a minute. He closed the door behind him and approached my table. "I know what you've been doing," he said, his voice now an icy whisper. "And I can't allow this to continue." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "I don't know what you're talking about, Richard." "Come on, Megan," he laughed, but his eyes were cold. "You're too smart to feign ignorance. I'm willing to make a deal. A promotion, a significant raise, whatever you want, if you'll just forget about it all." Anger boiled inside me, but I maintained control. "I'm not interested, Richard." He leaned in, his face just inches from mine. "Do you really want to play hard to get? Fine. If you don't accept my offer, I'll make sure you pay dearly for it." Richard left my office, leaving a trail of menace in the air. I knew he wasn't bluffing. With my heart racing, I ran to find Lisa. "He knows, Lisa. He knows it's me," he said, almost breathless. Lisa looked at me, eyes wide. "We have to act now, Megan. He's going to try to frame you." We had already anticipated this possibility. We had spent weeks creating a meticulous plan to expose Richard publicly, and now it was time to put it into practice. "Let's do it at the shareholder meeting," I suggested. "It's where all the company's influential people will be present. There will be no way for him to escape." Lisa nodded. "I'll prepare the system to hack the presentation. We need something that's impossible to refute." The night before the meeting, we met with Jake to go over the last details. "Megan, are you sure you're ready for this?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "We have no choice, Jake." "It's now or never," I replied, determined. The next morning, I walked into the meeting room with a mix of nervousness and determination. All eyes were on me as I made my way to the stage. Richard was sitting in the front row, a superior smile on his face. "Good morning, everyone," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "Today, I have important information to share." As I spoke, Lisa, hiding in the server room, began hacking into the presentation. The screens behind me flickered and suddenly began displaying a series of incriminating documents. "These documents prove that Richard Harris is involved in an embezzlement scheme," I continued, seeing Richard's expression change from confidence to panic. "This is nonsense," he shouted, standing up. "It's a scam." But before he could continue, Lisa appeared on the screen, displaying the evidence in real time. "This evidence is irrefutable," she said. "And there's more. Richard is involved with a corrupt politician, which makes this network of corruption even bigger than we imagined." The silence in the room was broken by the sound of firm footsteps. FBI agents entered, and one of them approached Richard. "Richard Harris, you are under arrest." As Richard was taken away, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. Tom was exonerated, and justice finally prevailed. I later discovered that Lisa was the corrupt politician's daughter, seeking revenge for her mother. The fight was far from over, but in that moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was determined to continue my fight for justice, no matter what came next. On that fateful day, the Blackwood and Company conference room was filled with tension. I could feel the weight of all the shareholders' eyes on me as I prepared to give the most important presentation of my life. Richard Harris, my boss and the person responsible for all the corruption I had uncovered, was sitting in the front row, wearing a confident smile that made me feel sick. At his side, his accomplices, who until then had hidden in the shadows, seemed equally sure of their impunity. I took a deep breath and started the presentation. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm here to share crucial information that directly impacts the integrity of Blackwood and Company and the confidence of our investors. Richard interrupted before I could continue. Megan, I'm sure we're all eager to hear what you have to say, but I hope it's brief and to the point. I gripped the microphone tightly, determined not to let him intimidate me. Indeed, Richard. What I'm going to show is not just a matter of numbers, but of ethics and responsibility. With one click, the first page of the presentation appeared on the screen. It was a chart that showed the financial discrepancies I had discovered. During the review of financial documents, I found a pattern of significant embezzlement of funds. These embezzlements were orchestrated by Richard Harris and his accomplices. The room erupted in murmurs. Richard stood up abruptly. This is nonsense. You have no proof. Yes, I do, I replied, trying to remain calm. And I'm going to show them to you now. At that moment, Lisa, who was backstage, hacked the presentation system. On the screen, incriminating documents, bank transfers and communications between Richard and a corrupt politician began to appear. The room fell silent as the evidence unfolded before everyone's eyes. These documents prove Richard Harris's connection to a network of corruption that also involves the corrupt politician, Jonathan Miller, I continued. They embezzled millions of dollars, harming not only Blackwood and Company, but also other companies and investors. Richard was pale. This is a hoax. She's lying. Before he could say anything else, the door to the room opened with a bang. FBI agents entered, led by a man in a black suit who addressed Richard directly. Richard Harris, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement and corruption. Richard tried to resist, but the officers quickly handcuffed him. His accomplices were also detained. The room, previously filled with a murmur of disbelief, was now silent as the agents led the corrupt away. Tom, my mentor and friend, who had been wrongly accused, was among those present. He stood up, visibly moved. Megan, you saved my life. Thank you. I smiled, with tears in my eyes. You always believed in me, Tom. I only did what was right. However, the biggest surprise was yet to come. After the confusion calmed down, Lisa approached me. I have something to tell you, Megan. Of course, Lisa. What is it? I asked, curious. She took a deep breath. Jonathan Miller is my father. He ruined my mother and me many years ago, and I swore revenge. That's why I agreed to help you. I needed to expose the truth and get justice. I was shocked by the revelation. Lisa, I didn't know. I'm so sorry for what you went through. She smiled sadly. Thank you, Megan. But now I feel like I finally got some justice. The meeting ended with a mixture of relief and astonishment. I was called to the stage by the shareholders and received a promotion for my courage and integrity. But, more important than any recognition, was knowing that Tom was exonerated and that, together, we managed to dismantle a network of corruption that harmed so many lives. I left the room with a promise to continue fighting for justice, now with a new understanding of the complexity and consequences of these actions. And I knew that with allies like Lisa and Tom by my side, I was ready to face any challenge that came my way.